This is not just a battle lost on a summer afternoon. This is not merely a military defeat carved into a ledger of Roman disasters. This is the moment the myth of Roman invincibility died before it was ever born. On a shallow riverbank 11 miles north of Rome, at a stream called the Allia, the legions did not simply fall, they dissolved. They threw down their standards. They abandoned their generals. They drowned by the hundreds in the Tiber, weighed down by armor they never unsheathed. The date, seared into the Roman calendar as the Dies Alliensis, was July 18th, 390 BCE, according to the ancient historian Tacitus, or perhaps it was 387 or 386. The precise year blurs, the trauma does not. How did a Roman army, poised to defend the Republic, flee before a single coordinated charge? How could 6 military tribunes, men elected to command, lose half their force to panic before the battle was truly joined? How did an entire city, Rome itself, simply leave its gates open, inviting the Gauls to walk in unopposed? The Senones under Brennus did not conquer the Queen of Italy through superior tactics or siegecraft. They conquered her because Rome forgot for 7 hours how to be Roman. And in that forgetting, the Republic glimpsed its own annihilation. This is the story of how a river became an abyss, how a chieftain soared on a rigged scale, vae victis, humiliated a civilization, and how a people who feared nothing on earth learned to fear the barbarians from the north. But what about the silence beneath Livy's elegant prose? The common interpretation, a sudden Gallic onslaught, a panicked Roman flight, a 7-month siege broken only by gold, and the sacred geese of Juno, has been transmitted for 2 millennia as a morality tale of hubris punished and piety rewarded. Yet this narrative, for all its dramatic power, rests upon a foundation far less stable than the Capitoline Hill. The historians who preserved it, Livy, Plutarch, Diodorus Siculus, wrote centuries after the fire reduced Rome's earliest archives to ash. Their sources were family legends, Greek rhetorical exercises, and the competing glorifications of aristocratic clans. What remains is not a single battle, but a palimpsest. Gallic movements misdated, casualty figures inflated, and the humiliating truth of a negotiated withdrawal overwritten by the myth of Camillus the Saviour, arriving deus ex machina to reclaim the city's honor. To understand the Battle of the Allia, one must first unlearn it, peeling back the patriotic varnish to examine the wood beneath. This documentary employs a multi-layered methodology to reconstruct what the ancient sources obscure. Through AI-assisted cross-referencing of Polybius, Diodorus, Livy, and Dionysius of Halicarnassus, we isolate narrative contradictions and textual borrowings, where the Gaulish chieftain Brennus suddenly acquires the name of the Celt who sacked Delphi a century later. Digital terrain reconstruction models the Allia's confluence with the Tiber as it existed in the early 4th century BCE, testing Livy's tactical geography against the river's shifting course. Archaeological data from the Palatine and the Forum Boarium calibrates our expectations. No widespread destruction layer supports the legend of a city burned to rubble. We find localized fire damage, not conflagration. We integrate demographic modeling, estimating Rome's citizen population at perhaps 30,000, her available manpower under 9,000 of military age, to expose the impossibility of the 40,000-man armies described by Plutarch. And crucially, we shift perspective. We stand not only with Quintus Sulpicius on the plain, but with the reservists on the hill, not only with Brennus measuring his ransom, but with the Vestals evacuating sacred objects to Caia, not only with Manlius Capitolinus waking to the cackle of geese, but with the Etruscan allies who may, in truth, have ambushed the departing Gauls and recovered the gold. We move through time, from the pre-battle diplomatic crisis at Clusium to the post-sack fortification of Rome's Serbian wall. We move through geography, from the Senoni settlements on the Adriatic to the refugee Romans in conquered Veii. We move through viewpoint, from the aristocrat to the plebs, the legionary to the Gaul, the matron sacrificing her jewelry to pay the ransom. These tools do not replace the ancient texts, they interrogate them. This story begins at the confluence of the Tiber and the Allia in high summer in either 390 BCE or 387 BCE, the precise year a casualty of the very destruction this battle wrought upon Rome's memory. It is a story that will end not with the raising of a siege, but with the raising of a wall. 12 feet of tufa blocks encircling a traumatized city, the first permanent fortification Rome had ever required. The stones of that wall, still visible in the shadow of Termini Station, are the true monument to the day the Gauls came. This is the Battle of the Allia, the panic that rewrote Rome. This story begins at the Allia River, 11 Roman miles north of Rome, on the 18th day of July. Though whether in the year 390 BCE, according to Varro's miscalculated chronology, or 387 BCE, according to Polybius's more credible Greek synchronism, remains a question over which historians have waged quieter wars than Brennus ever did. The long-term outcome this documentary will trace is not merely a sack, nor a ransom paid, nor a Gaulish withdrawal. It is the transformation of a city-state into a garrison, the psychological fossilization of a single day into a permanent religious taboo, the translation of military humiliation into military revolution. Before the Allia, Rome fought as a hoplite phalanx, rigid and slow, a pale imitation of Greek city-states she had never conquered. After the Allia, across the ensuing decades of Samnite wars and Latin rebellions, she would reforge her army into the Manipular Legion, flexible, aggressive, capable of absorbing shock and returning it with interest. The panic at the Allia did not break Rome, it recalibrated her, but that recalibration cost something indelible. For centuries, no Roman magistrate would undertake any significant enterprise on July 18th without consulting the omens and usually postponing. The Senate would avoid convening. The temples would receive silent prayers. The day of the Allia remained, in the Roman religious calendar, a dies nefastus, a day on which the business of gods and men was suspended, because on that day the gods had abandoned the Roman line. This story begins at the Allia River in the high summer of 387 BCE.